That's at the time.
This is Bryan Lloyd, and you're watching the Break It Down live show.
Yes, we are live. Holy shit. A couple of CI spies doing it, getting it done, man. What do you think about
what's
this?
Up, bro? What you tell me, man? Hey, brother. I'm right here, but I go covert, and I put them right here. So
nice. I love it. I love it. All right. So for the audience who are paying attention, this is Bryan Lloyd. He used to be in the Marines back in the olden times, been to combat, wearing a Save the Brave t-shirt, by the way, rock and roll.
Absolutely.
And, Bryan was what we call in our world a HUMINT collector, just like me. And we would go out every day, make relations with folks on the other side. And our job is to get as close to evil as possible so that we can hopefully reduce the amount of evil that happens to us, to our friends, even to the locals who don't necessarily care for us. We're trying to tamp it down and collect that intel and save some lives. How would you describe your job, Bryan? I just described your job for you, but how would you describe it?
Well, first and foremost, I think we got to take it back on a step because I don't think there is any one person within the military personally that doesn't contribute to the importance of the mission, right? All the way back from you're talking your ground pounders to your logisticians to your supply guys to like you name it. Well, we admin guys. I mean, he was still, but 100%. The way I describe my personal mission is, and the individuals who do what we do, is to provide the COCOM, which is the combatant commander, the best intelligence picture of the battlefield so he can best inform his troops on what direction they need to go. That would be what I would describe our specific mission as, if you will.
All right. Say that in English so that you don't say the words COCOM. Like, give it to me in 30 words or less.
So we provide direct intelligence to the combatant commander in order for him to best inform his troops that he is responsible for to go outside the wire and execute on the targets of which we provide.
Where do you gather this information, you specifically? Where's the best place for you to be? If I'm the commander, I'm like, hey, Bryan, where do I need to have you? Like, you need to be behind a desk? You need to be up a brigade? Where do you need to be?
No. Unfortunately, most of it for us, I would love to sit behind a desk sometimes. And we do sit behind a desk many a time.
Sure.
But no, we need to be outside the wire, man. That's where it's all at. And we actually utilize the, human intelligence is not a difficult term to understand. What it is collecting the intel from humans, whether witting or unwitting. And, from there, they are our instrument. And, obviously they're indigenous to the environment. Whereas, I blended in some places, maybe Ireland or England, you know what I mean? But I certainly don't blend in over in Iraq. We need them going out and being our eyes and our ears. And then when they bring that back, we want to be able to intelligently put that into a product. And again, a product that we know is going to be executed on, and take all risk mitigation possible that we don't endanger any of our soldier or Marines' lives or innocent civilians' lives, right?
Yeah, no, fair enough. One of the questions I get asked a lot is we don't look like whatever, Joe Iraqi or, the guy in Afghanistan. Are you wearing civilian clothes when you do this particular job?
Depends on my mission set, my brother.
Okay. In general, are you wearing just basically like you show up somewhere? Are you expecting to wear civilian clothes when you go outside the wire?
I have no expectations to answer that question. But to answer it in a fair way, if I'm going to embed myself with a conventional unit, all right, with a bunch of infantry guys that are ground pounding, and they're wearing camis and everything else. Absolutely. Do I want to be the guy with the red beard and his civvies walking on patrol, in line in tow with 15 other guys that, they're all in camis? Absolutely not. So I'm gonna throw on what you're wearing. I'm not too proud for that, right? But there are other mission sets where, I'm gonna go outside the wire and I'm gonna throw on whatever is convenient to the environment and go from there.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the challenges of that particular thing. Like, let's say you've got a commander that's sort of doesn't want you, doesn't understand your role. Not that they don't get HUMINT, but you're like, hey, I'm authorized to wear these clothes. It's going to make my job a little easier to blend in and to create some distance between me and you guys. While we're in the same unit, and they're like, nope, you're wearing camis. You're going to obviously have to do what they say, but there's a lot of inhibitors that are out there within the command when like people who fully aren't in charge of what you do, don't understand, couldn't do what you do, and they get in your way. Let's talk a little bit about those things that keep you either on the camp or limit your ability to do something that has nothing to do with your actual job.
Okay, so I think the first key to that question, if you will, is actually your ability to do your job. And the number one asset that you need to build is the commander, right?
All right, I like this.
So 100%, if you cannot gain the trust of the commander who has all the troops that supply the beans, bullets, and Band-Aids, then you have no business even going outside of that wire, because most likely you yourself won't come back home. And that, again, that's just my personal belief, right? And that's what I preach to all my young Marines when I was in, and it's what I preach to students that I teach now, that you absolutely need to educate the people that you are, and be humble about it, but you are working for, right? Mm-hmm. And even though we fall under a different chain of command and different authorities, you are still working for them. And, the mission set at the end of the day is get everybody home, right? Let's get the bad guys off the battlefield and let's do what we got to do. So that's number one. Number two, once you got past that, here's where it really becomes tricky. So you got,
and that's a big hurdle, by the way. Let's not minimize, like, once you get past that, like, you might take your whole tour and not get past that. Like,
that's very true. And there's some guys that don't ever get the opportunity, right? And so you can go through all the schools, all the training that we have, and you can role play all day long to learn how to do all these different techniques and everything that we utilize out in the field, as tradecraft and all that kind of good noise. Until you actually execute for real, you have not done. And so that's your first hurdle, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Gain the trust of the combatant commander. Then once you got that, guess who is the most important to gain the trust of? The three. I don't know. Who you gonna say? It's the guys that are walking out of the wire with you.
Fair enough. I agree with you.
The guys that are walking out of the wire with you that have absolutely no idea why they're going, where they're going, but they're following you. And when they get there, you tell them to set the outer cordon. And they do, and they have no understanding as to why they're doing what they're doing. Yeah. While we execute our mission, right? And even when we get back, they're like, I don't understand, Sergeant. Why did we just stand there for an hour and a half? Well, shut your mouth, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it comes full circle when I get back, right? And I'm building my target packages and everything else, and then I submit them up to hire, through the ops, and everything gets approved by the COCOM, combatant commander. And at that point, now 2 days later, we're getting ready to go execute on an HVT, a high value target, and then it's the aha moment, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
And just for the audience's sake, I would say that all of these things, he's giving you, fairly specific things different unit, totally different situation. It's always we're guys like us. We're often unattached or a small team or whatever it is, and so you show up to someone's family. A unit is, especially in the Marines, a tight family, and we don't have any friends. And instantly, like, we're going to start changing how they operate. I mean, if you're any good, like on day 3, they're like, hey, everything's changing, and you have to manage that because the staff will undermine you. And I would submit this to you, and I want to hear what you think, because I know it's true for me. The staff room, the people who are planning and everything else, they are more dangerous to me than the battlefield. The battlefield is dangerous as hell, but I've been kicked off of camps. I've been called names. I've heard so many things like they hate you. And I'm like, they hate me. And they do. And it's not because I'm doing anything to them directly. They don't even talk to me. And that's one of the things I had to learn early on was I had to constantly engage with us more than I did with them. Because when I bring back this alternate reality, whatever it is, they won't accept it if I don't spend a lot of time on the camp.
Well, it's fear of the unknown. You know what I mean? And we are unknown to them. And I would say, so I entered this job field back in early of 2003, right before the war kicked off in Iraq. And not that this is a new trade craft or, a new skill set to the military, right? This has been around for decades. But it was the first time to be introduced to urban warfare as we knew it in Iraq.
Right.
And we did not, even we did not collectively understand how to delegate the authorities amongst ourselves and maneuver the battle space, right? Mm. So, I'll go back to Ramadi in 04. We were sitting there maneuvering in 2 Humvees, but with the entire detachment, our HUMINT collection team, in 2 vehicles. It just takes one IED and then bam, there you go. There goes all your assets, right? Now, again, we know what we are as assets, but again, back then, the commanders had no idea. And it wasn't until April 6th of 2004 when we took a pretty hard hit and ended up losing 12 of our guys in 30 seconds. And that's when it was time to really get to work. You know what I mean? Not that we weren't trying to work before, but now we needed to figure out why are we not progressing better than the enemy. And when I say the enemy, I use that word in an honorable way, right? I honor thy enemy. If you're willing to pick up a weapon and defend your country, well, hey, man, what's up, brother? If we're in a 2A rifle range and you get me or I get you, that's what's up. So I do actually respect those individuals, and I value every human's life, regardless of race, creed, or where they're at. I mean, obviously, there's some people that just don't belong here, and we all know that. But at the end of the day, we had to evolve and morph into the situation and figure out what was going to be the most conducive. And again, it goes back to the combatant commander, right? We need to figure out how we can best inform the combatant commander to make the best decisions to place his men and women into harm's way and execute what the battle plan is going to be.
Okay.
Right?
All right. Let's work within this paradigm to provide some clarity for folks that don't understand a lot of this stuff. And again, a lot of times when we're talking about we are talking about us. It's just, I am Pete, your single element. I show up new to the family. So when we talk about how dangerous it is internally, we mean like you have to build trust. You can't build trust unless you produce. You can't produce unless you're out. If you're out, you can't build trust. And so like you're fighting this fight all the time, and it's crazy.
It's a self-looking ice cream cone.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And I want to bring ice cream up in a second. One of the other things too is April 6th, 2004, when they hung those contractors off the bridge in April 2004. Yep. This really let a lot of us know, like, this is for real. We are playing against someone who plays in a different way than we ever have before. And I would say to you, when I deployed in Bosnia of '96, almost 10 years earlier, what we did had totally changed into a newer format that we just didn't know. We didn't know how to prepare for it. The commanders understood us as a tool, but didn't know how to best, put us out there or get us access. And for the most part, we have to collect overtly. Like you can't say, just for the audience, you can't say, I'm a cattle farmer from the United States and I'm just trying to get to know people. You can't you have to, you're part of the military machine. You have to be able to be open about that and say, I'm here to collect information, whatever it is. And it's really hard to figure out how to do that. And then, and you'll know this, when you go into a place with a lot of intrigue and mistrust amongst each other, like in Iraq, we would take a report from someone. Oh, that guy over there is a bad man. The guy with sandals, mustache, drives a shitty little Opel or whatever. That's a bad guy. And we would believe them because we didn't have a better means of checking all that intel. And so we would kill a lot of people or target a lot of people that were, our job's about efficiency, right? Like what are the best 5 questions I can ask? Because I've literally got 10 minutes to talk to this person. And when we're grabbing the wrong people and grabbing the wrong intel, it's also hard to build trust. So,
well, and then not to cut you off.
No, perfect, please.
But what does that lead to when you do actually mislead or ask the wrong questions, right? Because often in for those who don't know, in Iraq and Afghanistan, these families, they're not 3-4 family person homes. They're 10, 15 family homes. You know what I mean? And so you can go in there and then you take, and I'm not going to use names or anything like that, but you take X target off the target and say you didn't ask the right 5 questions. Well, what did you just do? You put 14 fence hangers on the other side of the fence. And that going back to their tribal belief, that can last up to another 50, 60, 70 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so you got to know what you're doing. You have to know what you're doing, because if you don't, and you make a calculated move that you believe in, it could potentially cause a lot of lives downrange. And a lot of us, we always look at it like, just preserving American lives, right, overseas. But no, I mean, these people are people too. You know what I'm saying? And that's the reason we're there, is to help them get to the democracy and help them get to an area where, whether it's their government, my government, that's a pretty good one. Helping them get to a place of stability, if you will.
Yeah.
And
let me jump in and talk about this, because this is an important thing. One of the things I would always ask new agents, new collectors when they came out was who was running who. Because, okay, you go out and you find someone, and let's say I'm going to do quotey fingers, bad. And I use the word co-belligerent. We are all fighting, not necessarily each other. You might be in the middle of a family fight, an intra or inter-tribal fight, and you've got literally no clue. And every collector should admit to this, and if they don't, they got played. They got they were someone's source. So when you're out there and you do this and you take down the wrong house, your handler, who you think is your source, your handler is going to come to you and say, all right, I got another guy now. And they're going to run you your entire, right? Tell me I'm wrong.
I'm going to give you one of the most perfect stories.
All right.
So again, this happened at the very beginning of 2004. I had a kid. He was a walk-in, right? And I'm not going to get into specifics, right? But he came up to the gate and I debriefed him. And he had said that there were some surface air missiles in his neighbor's next door yard, and that we needed to go over there right now and go collect those. And I said, okay. Now, one of the biggest mistakes that some collectors make is they don't validate, right? They don't validate. You must have multiple. source, or you must have credibility within your asset, right? And so this guy was brand new to me, but that was, some information that was okay. I'm gonna go talk to the combatant commander. And so I put the kid on ice, and I went over and I said, "Hey, sir, they got a kid here, and this is what he's saying." And he's like, "Well, how credible is it?" And I was like, "I don't know. I've never met the guy before." You know what I mean? Yeah. And he's like, "Hell and high water, we're mobilizing a raid." And I'm like,
"All right.
I don't know if that's the right move, but it's your call. It's your unit. You do. You know what I mean? I can't stop you from doing it."
Yeah.
And so we do, and it's about 2:00 in the morning, and we have this kid with us in the back of one of the Humvees. He's sitting next to me, and I get out when we actually crash through the gate of this compound. And I told the driver, I said, "Watch this kid, because I need him to be here when I pull the guy out to validate that this is, who he thinks it is, right?" Sure as shit, the kid turns his head, and the kid's gone out of the back of the Humvee. We hit this guy must have been 75 years old. Had nothing on the compound at all. And I looked at the CO, and I said, "Well, sir, you didn't let me validate it."
Yeah.
So,
and to be fair, sometimes you just got to go with your gut, and commanders are taught to be audacious. So
right, but sometimes when you go with your gut, though, you got to understand that you're putting a lot of people at risk.
Yeah.
And the intel world, we look at it like we're intel wings. We sit behind a desk and all that stuff, which we do at some points. But when we're out actually operating, we can go into the MARSOC and SOCOM stuff if you'd like to. But what they don't understand is the tangibles, the people who actually it takes to get to that level to be able to actually do those kind of operations. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. And then I wanted to go back and add some context that you said earlier too, talking about like when you hit the wrong house and you do that repeatedly. Let's say you do that unknown. You may never know. Yeah. You may never ever know you hit 10 of the wrong houses because you were played. Every one of those houses now has someone who's likely, look, you're going to have to convince them that you're a good person, and you might have killed someone, that you might have ruined someone's lives. And so you can easily create this shitstorm around your unit that the next unit has no idea that shitstorm is there still, and they're just going to drive through that unit. So you own this legacy. Yep. It's terrifying when I think about that. And one of the things that I got to do, I got to stay and I got to watch unit after unit after unit. I used to be able to say, "Hey, hold on, that's a bad road. If we're going to go through there, let's slow down and let's engage people there and see if we can knock that down, or let's take a different route, because that's a hornet's nest." And I'm not saying avoid the fight. I'm saying understand there's something there, right, and it's not just the enemy,
because it's pick and choose your battles, right? There's a very famous general in the Marine Corps that is not Chesty Puller. So you guys can put your own spin on who you think I'm talking about right now. But he was the IMF commander back then. And again, this is Ramadio 4. So you can do a Google search on that one. Happens to have a nickname called Mad Dog. But anyhow, he came to our little COP that we had, the combat outpost that we were staying on. And this is when IEDs started becoming very prevalent, the improvised explosive devices, for those who don't know. But when they start, they every day they were picking up and they were getting more sophisticated. They went from little C4 charges up to 155 rounds to, now we're starting to use vehicle-borne improvised devices, right?
Right.
And so one of my missions, again, I had my network, and I would send them out every day to go canvass the area to look on these roads that we heavily trafficked, and come back and report to me so we can go to the engineers and say, "Hey, we think we got something over here, and they could go and dismantle or whatever. Well, this individual comes to our combat outpost, and that morning we hadn't had the opportunity to clear the road. And this is very unfortunate. But I did brief him. I was like, sir, we did not clear the road today, or at least as of this moment. I highly recommend you don't take that road. And, well, he's a general, so he's going to do whatever he wants, right? He took that road and ended up losing 4 guys. And it ripped a LAV right in half. And I'm sure if anybody out there is listening to this, is familiar with that story, they know exactly what I'm talking about. But it was very unfortunate, and it didn't need to happen. But that's the nature of war, right?
It is. And this is, we're painting a lot of things that we can look at now in retrospect. In the time, in the moment, we're working hard, we're working fast, we're not sleeping, we're doing everything we can. When did you become a reliably good collector in the field to where you could really lead other people to do good things, where even if you weren't there, you could read the report and say you missed it? Because it wasn't your first deployment. Because don't even try to tell me that.
I'm not even going to fake the funk on that one, man. All right, so I'm gonna preface this before I go into that. And that was actually a really good question. Put me on the spot. My very first deployment, my very first interrogation that I ever did was actually one of the funniest things that, and I tell this story till this day, and I'm getting ready to tell it right now. So when going through school, and I get it in different services, it's different. Not everybody's an interrogator in the HUMINT world, but in the Marine Corps, obviously we get the CI, the counterintel, the HUMINT, and the interrogation role, right? And so you go through school, and they teach you how to build your interrogation binder. And me being a good Marine, I'm like, yes sir, okay, build it up. And then here it was one day, I get a knock on the door, and I'm sitting in the team house, and they're like, hey, it's your turn to go interrogate this guy. Yeah, I'm like, ooh. I was 24 years old, man. And I'm not going to lie, I was scared as shit. I was probably more scared than the kid was. I was getting ready to go interrogate. And I walk in there, and I bring my binder in there, and I'm like, hey, I'm looking through the first page, and I'm like, all right, what's your name? Where are you from? Why are you here? What happened? This, that, and the other. And then again, and we're talking through an interpreter as well. This is before I spoke Arabic. And this kid's just looking at me like, you're an idiot, man. And he kept spitting on the ground. It was pissing me off. I'm like, I'm obviously doing something very wrong here. So I called the security guard, the MP, to come back over. And I said, hey, man, I'm going to step out of the cage real quick. Will you keep an eye on this guy? I need to go talk to somebody. And I called my buddy over. And again, rules were a little bit different back then, right? They're a little looser. And let's just say that I asked somebody to give me, who had expertise on the art of interrogation, to give me a on-job training exhibition, if you will. And I was like, wow, that's how you do it. And so it started from there, right? I will say now to answer your question, I did 2 more deployments after those, the 04 deployment. I don't think in my mind, I always felt like I was a good Marine, what I mean, a good collector.
Sure.
And throughout each deployment, I did some different things. But where do I think I became competent was when I joined MARSOC in 2009 and got selected for that. Right. Because, coming from a recon background and then, going through everything that I've been through, and then yeah, we can address the 55-day gunfight if you'd like to, but that I think in my mind defined me. And at least I think I have respect amongst my peers. But I'm not a glory hound or anything like that. So I'm just out there to save lives and make sure that I come home and make sure that they come home, and that's it, man.
Yeah, but you are a leader, and you have to be able to take junior agents, even if they're senior in rank or whatever, and they transition over into some other job title. I mean, I would read reports and I would say, you got played in this meeting. They're like, how can you know that? I'm like it's your report doesn't indicate that you were prepared,
right?
And we're in charge or developed it. Like, I can see it. Like, you didn't do these things. Now you have to go back and see this person.
Yep.
And start meeting one over again.
And you're actually telling on yourself, because the asset didn't put those words into the report.
Right.
You did.
Yeah.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. I would say I got a keen eye for that after about 2009.
Okay.
So it took me, a good, 3-4 years of actually putting the reports in. But then when I got put into the chief role as a team chief, so I started, my first role as a team chief was in 2007. And even then, I was still a little bit on the green side. You know what I mean? It was the first time I'd ever done it.
Right.
And thankfully, I had great mentors and Marines around me that could teach me along the way. But about 2009 is when it all really finally clicked.
Okay.
And I think at that point, after doing all the liaison with the different agencies, with all the liaison with the different DoD entities, you just kind of, it becomes like, okay, guys, like we're all here on a different page, but we need to get on the same page. And I believe every entity does it a little bit differently, but you want to try to do it as close as you possibly can, because every collector that's out there, regardless of a Marine, you know what I mean? Every collector that is out there is doing it for the same specific purpose. And that's
no doubt.
Take the enemy off the battlefield.
Take the enemy off the battlefield.
Yeah. So that's it, man.
So okay, let's. I love this overall kind of survey of what we do, because it is exceptionally challenging to get right, and it does take years to get it right. And again, like, we're specifically in my experience set, and this isn't talk about me. This is just to provide some color in general, so everybody can kind of understand how this goes. I deployed, and part of my job in '96 in Bosnia was just to ask a zillion questions. We went out every single day. Our team got to go out every day, all the time, because we had a good boss. He was mean. He was nasty. He was not a nice person. And I don't mean that in like he was a tough leader. I mean, he's just a jerk, But he got the thing, and he also was like, you guys are going to do all this work. And so we went out and we worked hard every day and asked questions, and I got great at asking questions. Or I cut my teeth, I should say. And then that next assignment, I went back to the schoolhouse in Huachuca, and I taught people source operations, and I had just done it. That doesn't normally happen in the Army. That was I got there by luck and some E4 magic. That wasn't me. It was some other guys like, you're going to go to this unit, and then just circumstance put me in a spot where I got to teach on the current skills that I had just done, and I got to watch my peers do their judo on me. Right. As I played a role, because just for the audience's sake, we play roles with each other all the time as we try to work on elicitation and everything,
and be as realistic as you can be.
Right. Yeah. And so you're not always easy. You're it's like, think about it like dogfighting in practice. You're trying to be hard to catch. And so I would run them through, like, I would take them outside of the textbook, and there's all these things you have to do for tradecraft and all that stuff. And I'm like, that doesn't work here though. This is combat. And so what you want me to do, I'm not going to do, because you haven't made it part of what I need to do. And I'm still not going to do it, even if you do that. And it would take our peers, And it would break their brain. And they're like, I have to adapt to this environment. Like, yes, you have to adapt to this environment. And you don't know what the environment is. So start working there. That gave me a foundation that was really uncommon because I was constantly playing roles with really good, experienced people and watching them learn and crack the nut made me a better instructor. And so I got to be really good so that by the time I deployed again in 2004, this time as a contractor or as a federal employee, depending on who I was working for, I got to stay in the field for 10 years. And, at the end of my time doing all that stuff, there was no one that could touch me in the field. No one. I mean, you might be a good collector and I'll acknowledge that. Like, yes, you are an excellent brown belt. I've got multiple degrees of black belt because and you know how this goes. You, as you get senior in rank, you graduate away from the field. You're running ops, you're running cells, you're doing all those other things. I went out every day.
I want to touch on that, Pete, because that's a very important point. One of the biggest missteps that we make as an intelligence community is we rotate our collectors so frequently. You, just as anybody else that is listening or anybody who knows about this community, knows how long it takes to develop a relationship. Yeah. Think about how long it took you to develop a relationship with your wife or with your husband or with you name it. It doesn't matter. But you only want to put me there 7 months.
Right.
And I'm not saying that I need to stay there the entire 7 months. You can rotate me and refresh me a little bit. Let me go back home too, right? And see my family. But why am I going from Ramadi to Haditha over to Jordan, over to Afghanistan, over to, you know what I mean?
I do.
Why not put me right back where all the same guys or gals that I've developed this relationship with that are providing me very valid information are at? That's out of my pay grade, man.
I agree with you. And to take that further, and what you're talking about is just like, we leave. We usually never come back. And so one of the things we learn by doctrine to do, although we never practice it, is how to do a handoff. And so we worry desperately that the unit that we hand off with gets a great handoff. But you'll have elements that come in advance of that handoff. And so as that unit's getting ready to come in, you'll send some guys ahead and they'll be like, okay, this is what we're seeing on the ground. And then they'll do that. No one stays on the back end to hold that transition.
Correct.
Ever. Right. And so as a guy that stayed, I'd be like, the last unit was desperate to eliminate this problem for you. And I could hold it for them. I could say, this is why they did this. This is understand, like they tried this. This didn't work. Let's try it, but let's try a different angle on it or whatever it was. If you don't have that continuity that's trusted, and I had to build that trust each time too. You lose out. And then the other thing is so let's say you and I are going to do a handoff, right? You're like, these are my sources. I may not ever work with any of your sources ever again because the handoffs are so hard. You will never know that you gave me a bad handoff.
Right.
You'll never know.
And guess who else you're also building the trust with, Pete?
Tell me.
The company commander. You might be a brand new collector that fell into a seasoned collector's network.
Yeah.
And now not only do you got to build that relationship with all them individuals, but then you still need to go out there. And age, as much as I hate to say it's not a factor, it is a factor. You know what I mean? In the environment that we operate in, and so is gender. And I'm not going to get into all that kind of stuff because there's different ways that you can handle all of it. But at the end of the day, that's all on your plate. And oh, by the way, you still need to wake up, kid up, get ready to go out. And I don't think I've ever been on a single deployment, and I've been on 7 of them as a humaner, that I slept more than 3 hours a night.
Yeah.
That's on a good day.
Let's spend some time here because
that's on a good day.
I'm working for the government, right? And, I'm a collector and I'm a good one. And so they would say, just whatever, as long as your commander is okay with it, you bill whatever you need to bill. And then the bill starts showing up. And this is federal money, like I'm a DoD civilian, and so I'm like, yeah, I worked 120 hours last week, and they're like, bullshit. Like you don't know the 82nd Airborne, you know. If you go home, and this is no joke, I've seen this happen. If you go home for the day after a 14-hour day, they look at you like, what are you doing? Are you halftiming? And they will call you halftime, you know? So Bryan, I'll start with this, but let's talk about what a day looks like. I mean, so you get up, and of course your brain never stops. You're always thinking, always trying to put the puzzle together. I've got to talk to 10, 15 people in the military just to maintain my relationships. I've got to eat. I've got to work out. I've got to do pre-mission planning. I've got to finish up any work I didn't get done last night. And then eventually I've got to go on a mission for the day.
And do my job.
And do my job. Maybe if I'm on a big camp, maybe go to a staff meeting or two. Maybe get called in. Hey, come talk to us today. And then at the end of the day, now I've got to write my patrol report. And like you said, I mean, I would say oftentimes I work 36-hour days. You know, like, okay, yesterday's not over for another 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, whatever. Like, okay, yesterday's work's now that was done. Let me go catch a nap, get up, and go again.
Well, so to put that statement in perspective, our whole purpose, right, at the end of the day, right, our whole purpose is to collect information, right? And if that information is not reported, then what was the purpose?
Exactly right. Exactly right.
So that's what a lot of people fail to understand. The rounds pop off the same way for you, me, anybody else around, right?
Yeah.
And gunfights are gunfights, and car bombs are car bombs, and mortars are mortars. We all need to eat. We all need to sleep. But it does take a level of going to the next level, if you will, in my opinion, of your mindset to understand that you're not afforded the same luxuries that the grunts are. And it's really kind of funny to say because they're not afforded a lot of luxuries. You're going to do the same thing that they do, and then you still need to do what you're going to do. And that's the reality of it, and that's why. Now, again, I can't speak for the Army or some of the other DoD components per se, but in the Marine Corps, we're a small community. There's only about 400 of us, and within those 400, there's only about maybe 30 of us that are SOCOM. And again, I'm retired now, so I take myself out of that picture. But the point is that's the infrastructure, man. That's what you're looking at. And,
and if you develop your reputation, you're not shaking it in that family either.
No. If you come up, again, you asked when did I think I was a solid collector? 2009, and that's when I got pulled over to SOCOM. And I did my time over there. And then I wanted to do one Twilight tour before I retired. So I went back to where it all originated, which was in Camp Pendleton. I finished out there. I was a source manager for SP MAGTF, which is a special purpose Marine Air Ground Task Force for those that don't know. Had 18 collectors underneath me under 3 geographic locations from Jordan, Syria, 4 actually, Kuwait and Iraq. And we rocked it, man. It was a good time. For those who in 2016 remember the convoy of 300 vehicles of ISIS fighters that were outside of Fallujah trying to flee to Syria, that was actually one of my collectors who got the intel on that. That caused that air raid, and that is an actual real thing. It's open source, so I'm not afraid to say it.
Yeah, it happened in the news. We saw the news.
It was spectacular.
I want to spend a little more time in this space because you've got these 15 to 20 collectors underneath you.
Mhm.
You literally, and I'm just asking, I guess, but I'm telling because I've seen this and done this kind of work. You can do very little for them. Like you can back them up.
Well,
You keep work off of their back, but most of the work has to be. They have to write their own report. They have to collect their own intel. They have to plan their own ops. You know,
correct. The only thing I can do is give guidance
right,
based off of what I'm seeing coming in,
right,
right? Um, and again, the reports don't lie, right? When they're sending the information up, and I'm quality controlling the information before we publish it to the intel community. At that point, I can pick up on P's and Q's of what you could do better. You could maybe, I probably wouldn't do that. But again, it's all personality driven, right? No one collector is going to jive with an asset the same as the other. And it's just, I don't care how you want to cut and dry it, it's just not going to happen. And especially when you're dealing with the individuals that in our current time frame that we're dealing with, they tend to be specific to their needs and to how they want to act. And these guys aren't spring chickens, right? They've been doing this, since time began. So, in my opinion, it comes down to the only thing you can do: QC, quality control, your collector stuff. Give them the best input that you possibly can. But I can't sit in that room for you,
right.
And take over that operation. Well, I could if I wanted to take it over, but you get my point.
Yeah. I'm trying to put into the audience's mind, like, the amount. So, I mean, just the pile of work there is day to day. And by the way, the stack of books you have to manage fit on the screen, right? And so there's a lot of self-training. There's a lot of experiential learning that you have to do. And then
the funny thing is, I don't even know how to read.
But you are a Marine after all. The other thing I wanted to say too about managing these assets, like you have to have a lot of trust in your guys, and how we work, you don't get a lot of time to do that. So you have to just kind of have like a shorthand. Like, okay, let's say that I come in as a DoD asset. Hey, Bryan, we're going to plus you up one guy. He's really good from the DoD. We may go out for drinks for a night, maybe two, and then I got to go do my job. And you're going to slowly get to know me, but I've got to say to you, hey, I know how to do this. I've deployed a lot. Here's my bona fides. And then you basically put your faith in me that I know how. It's the craziest damn thing in our field, and how much trust is required to lead people that are going to be wild horses, that are going to do shit. I'm going to make the wrong call, by the way. And you're going to have to cover my back because I don't know everything. I know granular stuff. And you've every now and then got to go, hey, more of this, less of that, in terms of like how I'm collecting. And then I've got to go back to you, go, I can't do more of this. I can do more of, how about that? And that shit is not easy.
Yeah. Where does it end? You know what I mean? I think that's when, you're spot on with the comment that you made there. Because again, what some people fail to understand in the collection world, I'm not talking people listening or who know nothing about our community, but people within our community, what sometimes they fail to understand is every action has a reaction, and with that reaction can cost lives. You know what I mean? And here we are, woe is me. Oh, I haven't slept, or I haven't ate. I haven't done this, and I got to go on this patrol. I got to do this. I got to go that. I got in this gunfight. Whatever the case might be. At the end of the day, I think what makes people good at this job is their tenacity. The best collectors have the tenacity. You don't even have to have the best G2, the best intelligence. You really don't. You just have to have the best understanding of what the basic fundamentals of this job is all about and what it's for. And if you can go out and execute that, God bless you. You know what I mean? God bless you. and
Yeah.
the rest will do itself. You'll get additional training as you see fit. You don't have to go all the way up, to the tip of the spear. You can stay at the strat level. You can stay at even at the strat level. I mean, let's think about all the collectors at the strat level. I mean, shit, or the cyber level.
Yeah.
And everything they're doing every day. I'm sure somebody's hacking my computer right now. You know what I mean?
It's true. Our job is so multifaceted. On the Army side, you can be a lie detector dude. You can be a person that looks for or in places bugs. You can be completely strategic and run international sources in conjunction with State Department operations. You can be like me, where you're like on the side of a mountain every day for your whole damn career. I wanted to tell you, so one of the things I did to build trust, and I learned this way late. I wish I would have learned it earlier. So I talk about it a lot for collectors, especially when I showed up in someone's home, their OP, their cop, their whatever it was, whatever I thought that they might not have in terms of comfort, foods. And typically I'd bring a barrel of ice cream. I'd bring that. So when I fly into the helicopter, I would here are 2 barrels of ice cream. Why did you bring those? Because I'm new here. And I care about you guys, and that shit would warm hearts, because it's easy to hate the new guy,
Now let me do a reverse approach on that one.
Yes.
And it was literally, again, this goes back to 2004. I was on a patrol. This was in April. We were between the 6th and the 10th doing Operation Bug Hunt. And again, I'm not going to go into that. But we ended up taking an op pause, and there was a mother and a little daughter. She couldn't have been, you met Madison, it couldn't have been any older than she is. She's 6, she's 7 now, but she couldn't have been any older than 6. And I just happened to take a knee in their driveway. And, we got our dispersion and everything that we needed. And she motioned to me, and she's like, wait a minute. And she runs into the garage and comes out with a popsicle. Man, do you know how hard it is to get anything that is cold in Iraq? When she handed that to me, my heart melted, man. I literally, I'm like, you know what? I'm here for the right reason. And no matter what happens today or from here on out, I'm gonna make sure that I give it my best, and that's all you can do. And some gave all, and it is what it is, right? They're always going to be our brothers, the sisters, and when God calls, God calls. But there's no reasoning for it.
There's 2 things I want to talk to you about that, what you just said too. Here's the other side of that popsicle story. We're doing a standard military operation. We're in a town in Baghdad, just a neighborhood or whatever. And they've got this park plots, so it's like a big square, and it's an old, it's derelict park, but it's probably a nice place in the time. And so we're just parked around this ring, just the cars came in, and it's 100 yards long. It's a big space, but we filled it up. And so our vehicle parks on the sidewalk. Sidewalks are huge. And, I go and I do my job. I dismount, I get out, and I go talk. And then I come back, and someone from my vehicle had taken a dump on a guy's walkway to his front door. I think I told you the story, maybe. Not even a 10-foot sidewalk into his. This is the pathway to his house. So I come back. I've done my job. I'm chilling. I'm going to come maybe even catch a nap while we're sitting there. Sounds weird in a combat zone, take a nap, but hey, when you're not moving,
you're resting.
And all of a sudden, I had a new job to do, and I'm like, "Who did this?" And then the gunner, and these guys have no respect for me. I'm literally like a strap hanger to them. And what he doesn't know is that I've got quite a bit of weight with the commander. I'm like, "Who did this?" And I'm not trying to get anybody in trouble. Right. And they're like, "Oh, Ricky did." Ha ha ha. I'm like, "Hey, you got to clean that up." And they're like, we're not going to do that, sir. And I'm like, "Listen, here's what's going to go down. I'm going to start with the vehicle commander, and someone's going to clean this up because you cannot crap on someone's doorstep." And they laughed me off. And so, sure enough, E5 walks up, and I'm like, "Hey, man, we got a problem." And I gave him the same thing, and I'm like, and he's like, you don't have to go another inch." And he's like, Ricky, get your ass out of that turret. You clean that up. You go knock on that guy's door. And he blew him up. But it's something like that. Imagine if a collector wasn't there, you know? What if that E5 had come up and he's like, that's funny, we're leaving, you know? My cousin brags about throwing a piss bottle from the turret at another Iraqi. And I'm like, dude, you're going to get me killed by doing that shit.
And not just you. I think it comes down to, and this has always just been me. I come from a family of Marines all the way back from the Korean War. Yeah. And, you know, from Korean War to Vietnam to Desert Storm, you know, all 0311 machine gunner type infantry to myself. Every person deserves respect. You know what I mean? Every person, and not every person deserves to be here, but they deserve respect until they have displayed a level of aptitude that they no longer are part of civilian society. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, and also they're not the only person watching you. You know, it could be a commander that sees you. It could be an Iraqi that, or, you know, someone else who's like, that guy, you know, treated him with, I mean, respect is just the right way to do it. You can't always do it. You can't always be gracious, but you can always work at it, you know?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And in my opinion, I have always respected anybody who's ever raised a barrel at me. And we were in the two-way gun range, and you know, I mean, hey, you know, that was your choice. That was my choice, right? I chose to be here. And regardless of whether I believe in the politics of it all or anything else, at the end of the day, I respect you as a person. And it's unfortunate that, you know, well, it's not unfortunate because I won, but you get my point.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's again, disrespecting people. The only thing that does is creates hate and discontent. And that hate and discontent, not only does it spill onto what the good people are trying to do, it spills onto the civilians. Because the civilians that are sitting there locally and actually watching that take place, what kind of, have you ever read the book Ugly American?
No, but I know the tale, though. I know the story.
Yeah, it's, I mean, come on, man. Like, you just can't be that way, right? Yeah.
Well, and if you're a collector, everybody should be high-fiving you when you're there anyhow. People should love you. And if not, then I'm an out-collect you. You should just go back to the house and plan ops while I go out and get high-fived and get shots poured for me in Iraq during Ramadan. I mean, come on.
Well, at the end of the day, our job is to remain anonymous, right? And, you know, I'm not out for the glory. I'm not out for the fame. I don't think you were either. I don't think any of the brothers that I've worked with and, you know, had the privilege to work with are out for any of that. I think what everybody was out for is we possess a very unique skill set. And not everybody has the ability to engage other human beings and be able to manipulate and maneuver the way that we do when it comes to engagement. I think some people, you know, I take a look at actors, well, and anybody who's listening right now, you know, let me ask you this question. If you were in a room full of 100 people, would you be nervous?
Yeah.
Right. It takes an ability to be able to engage, right? And the natural response for those who said no is, yeah, you would be, in my opinion, because even I get nervous sometimes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Now let me give you a list of questions that you shouldn't ask in that room, because the question list we get, and I always say like this, you can't find out where the fucking bombs are by saying, where are the bombs? I've got to ask the right questions. I appreciate that. You want to know that. You don't have to even write that one down. I get it. You want to know where the bombs are. Yeah, now I got to go in that room of 100 people and I've got to figure out who to talk to, you know, and then make, it's
Well,
So,
and I got to
yeah,
start reading neuro-linguistic programming, right?
yeah,
Who's getting squirrely? Who's not getting squirrely?
yeah,
Yeah, whose demeanor is what?
yeah.
It's just like going to a KLE on a key leader engagement, right? When you sit down on those, I mean, some of the best assets I've ever had came out of those, right? You go into a village, and I really won't go too much into the village stability platform operations, but you start getting into those, and yeah, some of my best guys, they were hang-arounds, and again, it took me a couple of weeks of like ticking around the block type deal, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
to finally be like, hey, dude, I think you want to talk, you know what I mean, and then they did.
The other thing that I've learned along the way is that my job is to find the evilest person I can find because they're the one doing all the nasty shit. So I'm going to look for the alcohol because those guys don't give a fuck. Like they're going to be. I'm going to look for that person and hopefully I find them. And when I do, I know the question, and I'm not going to share those questions because that's my own stuff, and we can get into some crazy places. But I know what to look for, and if I find you, you're going to love me. So I have to cozy up with evil. And so this is what I wanted to, and we're at an hour. Can we go a little longer?
Yeah, I can go as long as you want, man.
Okay. So here's the thing. I wanted to point out, as I've gotten older and I've reflected on my time in service, is I realized just how dangerous it is. Now, look, stepping on the battlefield is dangerous. I'm not talking about that. Like, yeah, you can get shot. Yeah, you can get blown up. Yeah, we're all getting hurt every second we're on the battlefield. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the danger you can create for your peers, for the unit behind you, for the next unit and the next unit and the next unit, all of this danger. And then if you can't empathize with someone who lives in a war zone and like draw that out and let them be damaged, which requires a lot of vulnerability in our part. And maybe you didn't get into this stuff, but I found that highly powerful to just understand, like, I would be exactly like this person, potentially, I mean, I can't say I wouldn't, given their circumstances, whether they were a bad person, whether they were just what I would call extra legal. They weren't illegal. I mean, they're illegal, but not really. Like, they're not trying to break the law. They're trying to survive.
Right.
And so the amount of loss, all of those kids that were killed, the uncles, the brothers, the cousins, all the PTSD we get from being there, they live there, And so you have to expose yourself to all of this. And it's I call it my book of woe, and it tore me apart. I didn't realize it.
It should be your book of opening your goddamn eyes, right? Because I agree with you 100%, man. I get to come home, God willing, right, at the end of my deployment.
Yep.
What I don't get to do is have to wake up there every single day for the rest of my life and walk around the neighborhood and try to go get a gallon of milk, or try to corral a goat, or try to get the neighborhood donkey to move whatever. I think, again, absolutely living the greatest country on earth, in my opinion. And I love America, and God bless. I've been to 35 countries. I've seen a lot of things. But some of these countries, to include, my wife's from southern Mexico. She fled, southern Mexico because of the cartel, right? I would gladly right now kit up and head down and take up, let's get the fight on. Hey, let's do it. Because she still has family that lives down there that are still being terrorized by that kind of stuff. Everybody literally deserves the opportunity to live a free life, and unfortunately, that's just not the way the world works. And so you got to be a realist, right? And when that happens, that's when we come knocking on your door. You know what I mean?
All right. So listen, I don't want to go any more on the danger side because it's Friday and we covered a lot of stuff. You and I both know the job is extremely dangerous. Do you want to ask me anything? I mean, not often you get two guys with this much experience in the room, but what do you want to ask me on the record in front of all these people?
What do I want to ask you on the record? What did you take away from this?
There's two big things that I learned. And the first one is when we're going to go create stability, and I learned this from he wasn't a source. He was just a guy that I worked with a lot. He was, it wouldn't be fair to call him a source, but of course he was. But he said that he was a governor of a district in Afghanistan. And he said, there's only room for one sword in the scabbard. And that really solidified like how we have to approach these problems. And if it's not him and it's us, then that's easy. I can go back to the commander, and this commander got it. This American commander, he's like, got it. All right, what's this guy want to do? And then what does he need from us specifically? And how much can we just stay out of the way and let him run the show? And that allowed that person to start to lead. It still fails because it's really hard to stabilize a place like Afghanistan or Iraq, but that was the really big thing. And then the other thing is I stopped a long time ago. I stopped focusing on threat in terms of collection. That stuff will flow in. If I don't look for it, it will flow in like crazy. And I can pass it off to someone else. Like if I'm in your unit and you and I are collecting, I'll be like, hey, here's some threat stuff for you. It's going to pay the bills for you. I'm going to go get the unknown unknowns, the stuff that nobody else can get, and you do that by doing the things that nobody else is doing. And I'm not saying take on more risk. I'm just saying things like I would invite the leaders onto camp and treat them like VIPs, take them to the chow hall. And I'd give them ice cream. I'm like, hey, you want to take some muffins home for your kids? And people would be like, why are you feeding that guy? Because if it was John McCain and he came here, we'd have a turkey. We'd have all kinds of things. This guy's important. And then I would have all these super important people come in and I would feed them instead of them feeding us. And that flipped the tables completely.
Well, yeah. So the key takeaway there off of what you just said is just maintain rapport. You know what I mean? Just respect and rapport. And, we can't dictate we can dictate, the battlefield, but we can't dictate our future as God foresees it, if that makes sense. But we do have a unique skill set and the ability to improve lives, going forward. And, hopefully, utilize our skill set to the best of our ability.
Yeah.
To be able to, when we do go down range, when we're called upon, be able to bring as many of our brothers and sisters home as we possibly can. And again, just improve lives of where we're going.
Yeah.
And that's the way I look at it, man.
I would push back on you that we don't control the battlefield because
we have. Okay, all right, I'll hear you out.
When we're there, okay, great. But the moment we pull back, their influence floods right in behind us. So we create a high tide for us. We pull back, and then they own that space.
That's a vacuum.
But I mean, it's also called them winning. Well, we don't ever pull the flag. We never capture a unit. We never destroy an army anymore, right? So that fight is fought with the people.
Oh, that's a whole different discussion.
And here's the other thing I'm going to say about that, because I want to add this part in, just in case anybody's listening. It's not important that we win hearts and minds. It's important that our partners win hearts and minds. If the government is not legitimate, if it's not valuable to those people, it doesn't matter if they like us. And we never think that way. So this is what I'm talking about. Like so yes, militarily, we need to be able to win. But if you're only focused on the military win, you cannot win that fight. You cannot, not in a modern fight.
It's hard to win a military fight anymore unless we go in with everything that we got.
And kill everybody.
Because, well, we don't want civ cats, right? We don't want civilian casualties. And that's the biggest thing. And it's unfortunate when it does happen. I've seen it happen. You know what I mean? I'm not even going to go down that road right now. But, we're there for a good purpose. But again, it goes back to my fence sitters, right? Those people who, what you just spoke about earlier, who don't have the ability to go out and get the ice cream, but they're living in an environment that is filled with nothing but chaos and war.
Yeah.
Right. Whether they want part of it or not doesn't matter. It's introduced into your life. Like you're a part of that. And when you put them in that situation, and now I just took your little sister on accident, or I took whoever, what do you think that's going to do?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And not that I did it intentionally.
Right.
But accidents happen. I mean, 500-pound bombs, when they fall out of the sky, they're pretty big.
Yeah. Well, how about this? How about when a drone strike happens and no one ever goes back to that place from the American side? We don't own that message.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like not even coming back and being like,
yeah,
maybe.
Yeah. Or like 2 towns over. No, that killed a bunch of kids. You're like, it did. No, it didn't. No, we have the video. Like, that doesn't matter. They don't have the video. They have the knowledge that you killed kids.
Yeah, no, that's the kind of stuff as a warfighter that keeps me up at night. And I'm personally responsible for an incident that, again, I'm not going to get into, but I think about it all the time, right?
Yeah,
and
we've all done it. If you've collected long enough, you've made some pretty major mistakes. There's no doubt. That's war.
It is, man. And obviously, I'm not trying to justify anything by what I'm saying right here, but I'm trying to come at peace with my life and my family, and I believe in what it is that we do, what you do, obviously, and collectively as a nation, what we do, pushing forward. And I will support it through and through. I will jump.
I got one last question for you.
Okay.
I know you'll fight hard. There's no doubt about that. What is your one thing or 2 things that you learned from all this experience, where you're like, damn, that's the key? What is that? What is that 1 or 2 things?
The 1 or 2 things from my entire life experience.
In terms of being a collector and out in the field, when like giant locks are unlocking, what were those keys?
Okay, the biggest ones are always understand the basic fundamentals. Okay. I don't care what environment that you're operating in. The basic fundamentals do not change. All right. Now, I know that sounds cliche in the schoolhouse, and some people aren't going to understand what I'm talking about, but your 8 pillars of the basic fundamentals, they will never change. So when you execute your operations, make sure when you're doing your pre-mission op orders and everything like that, that you go into it with that in mind, right? Because that's going to save lives. It really will. Second thing I've taken away from what I've learned in my entire experience is do not be quick to judge. Do not be quick to judge. Mistakes happen very quickly when you do. And you can't take them back, right? You can't take them back. And when I say quick to judge, it doesn't mean to be the enemy. It doesn't need to be, the lance corporal. But you need to treat everybody as if they understand what they're doing, because what we all do know, and if you don't know, complacency kills, right? And human error is there. You know what I mean? It just is.
Yeah.
So.
All right, man. That's a great show. I don't know anybody that does this kind of podcast where you have 2 no shit collectors talking about this stuff. So anybody listening, yeah, it's cool. It's cool to be able to share this and discuss how challenging. I mean, we just went into some things. We could have gone on for an hour about, damage within the unit that is created. We're like, can you just let me get out? I had to fight my way to get out into combat, if you can believe that. I'm going to start a fight. I'm going off this camp with all of these guys. You are not going out. All right, we're going to fight.
Well, hey, if your crew wants me back, man, I'm more than welcome to come into some different topics and,
Yeah.
and everything else.
We'll do it again. We'll get some more guys on, and it's just good to share these stories because as warriors, when we go out, we gather all this information. It's not an easy job. It's easy to ignore it. It doesn't look like Jason Bourne, but I'll tell you this right now. I know this is true. If there was a Jason Bourne and he came out onto my camp, he would shut his mouth and follow what I was doing because he knows, like, this is not his world, and he'd be like, no, whatever you want to do. Because it's not easy to do what we do. It's not easy to work 20+ hour days, followed by 20+ hour days, followed by 20+ hour days.
And what everybody needs to understand is our world all right. So in the Marine Corps, we have the motto, deny, detect, deceive, right?
Right.
But that's not my mission. My mission is to come home and bring everybody else home that I'm supporting.
Yeah.
And that's all there is to it. And if you can't get past that simple mission statement because you want to be Jason Bourne or you want to, whatever the case might be, I don't know.
I will tell you right now, you and I can both out-collect Jason Bourne because he kills people. I build trust. That's the first thing I do. Here's what Jason.
But you could get pocket litter though.
What's that?
We could collect all the pocket litter though.
Oh. Okay, I'm going to let you go because this Friday and you should have a good time with your wife and your kid and everything. Thank you so much for coming on.
Hey,
stand by for a sec. I'm going to sign off.
All right, Pete. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure, and thanks for anybody who